Shane Foster didn't even look up. When the shouting started, he just gripped his 5-year-old son's hand tighter. "Stay close, Jason," he muttered, eyes darting toward the dark corner of the parking garage where the voices were echoing. It had been a long shift at the mechanic shop, his shirt still stained with grease, and all he could think about was microwaving leftovers and maybe, if he was lucky, getting Jason to bed without a battle. But the yelling wasn't stopping. It was getting worse. "I said no," a woman's voice snapped, sharp and full of fury. Jason flinched beside him. Shane knelt down and looked his son in the eye. "Wait here, buddy, behind the truck, okay?" Jason nodded, eyes wide. Shane turned and walked straight toward the sound. A man in a suit stood too close to a woman in heels, his voice low and angry as he grabbed her wrist. "You think you can walk away like that?" "I don't owe you anything," she snapped, yanking her arm free. Shane didn't hesitate. "Hey, step back." The man turned, surprised. "Mind your business." Shane didn't. He stepped between them, his jaw set. "This is my business now. You should leave, now." The man looked him up and down, sneered at the oil-stained shirt. "You're nobody." "Still standing here," Shane said calmly. The guy muttered something under his breath and stalked off toward the elevator. Shane turned to the woman, expecting her to be shaken or upset, but she was composed. Strong, even. Her hair was slightly tousled, her lipstick smudged from the argument, but her eyes were steady. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Yeah, thanks." He looked around. "You parked nearby." "Just over there," she said, pointing toward a sleek black car tucked into a corner. "I'll walk you." "You really don't have to." "I'm not letting anyone walk out of a garage alone after that." She didn't argue. They walked in silence for a few seconds until she glanced at his shirt. "Rough day." "Just another Tuesday," he gave a quick laugh. "Cars don't fix themselves." "You're a mechanic." "Yup, Foster Auto, just down the street. My dad started it and now it's me." When they reached her car, she unlocked it but didn't get in right away. "I'm Kaia Ellington." "Shane," he said, shaking her hand. "Shane Foster." She smiled. "Thanks again, Shane." He nodded and turned to leave but paused. "Hey, that guy, he gonna be a problem?" Kaia hesitated. "No, he's just someone who doesn't like hearing no." "Good, 'cause if he is, I'll be around." She tilted her head, studying him. "You always walk strangers to their cars." "Only the ones brave enough to yell back at a guy twice their size." She laughed softly. "Well, thanks for that." "Take care, Kaia." He walked back to Jason, who peeked out from behind the truck. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah, bud, let's go home." Kaia sat in her car for a long moment after they left, staring at the spot where Shane had stood. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not since before the board meetings, before the billion-dollar merger, before she became the name behind Ellington Capital. No one had even called her brave in a long time. It was 2 days later when Shane saw her again. He was under the hood of a pickup when the bell above the shop door jingled. He wiped his hands and stepped out, expecting another customer with a busted alternator, but it was her. Kaia, wearing jeans and a white blouse, no bodyguards, no driver. "You again," he said, surprised. "Hope you don't mind," she said, holding up a brown paper bag. "I brought lunch. You said you worked here." He blinked. "You brought me lunch." "Well, I figured it was the least I could do. You did save me from a very loud, very dramatic scene." He opened the bag slowly. "Sandwiches, 2 cans of soda, chips. This is really nice. You didn't have to." "I know, I wanted to." Jason came running from the back, holding a wrench too big for his hands. "Dad, I fixed the O." His eyes landed on Kaia. Shane set the bag down. Kaia, this is my son Jason. Kaia knelt in front of him. Hi Jason, nice to meet you. Jason looked at her like she was made of gold. You're really pretty. Shane groaned. Jason. Kaia laughed, eyes crinkling. Well, thank you, you've got good taste. They ate on the back steps of the garage, sitting on overturned crates. Kaia asked Jason about dinosaurs, and he told her everything he knew. Shane couldn't stop watching her, how she listened, how she laughed, how she didn't flinch at the grease on his hands or the smell of oil in the air. When she finally stood to leave, Jason looked disappointed. Will you come back? If your dad doesn't mind, she said, glancing at Shane. He nodded once. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Days turned into weeks. Kaia kept showing up. Sometimes with food, sometimes just to talk. She'd sit on the hood of a car while Shane worked, asking questions about engines and spark plugs. Jason adored her. Shane tried not to, but it was getting harder. She never talked about her job. He assumed she worked in marketing or something corporate. Whatever it was, it didn't matter to him. She was down to earth, funny, smart, and something about her made him feel like he could breathe for the first time in years. One evening, he found her waiting outside the shop as he locked up. She was dressed differently, sleek black dress, heels, makeup. He raised a brow. Date night. Charity gala, she said, rolling her eyes. I have to go shake hands with people I don't like. You clean up nice, he said before he could stop himself. Her lips curved. So do you, when you're not covered in motor oil. He laughed, touché. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Wanna come with me? He blinked. To a gala? Kaia, I don't even own a suit. I'll buy you one. You don't have to. I want to. He stared at her. Why? Because I like you, and I think you'd look really good next to me. He swallowed hard. That's a lot. She nodded. I know, but I've had a long life of a lot, and I don't want to waste time. Shane stared at her for a long moment. Then nodded. Okay, he said. I'm in. Kaia smiled, then leaned in and pressed a kiss to his cheek. Pick you up tomorrow. He watched her walk away, heart thudding in his chest. Jason peeked out the door behind him. Dad, are you gonna marry her? Shane laughed. But deep down, something told him maybe, just maybe. Shane adjusted the unfamiliar collar of the gray-tailored suit Kaia insisted he try on. He stood awkwardly in front of the mirror in the back of the boutique, the price tag still dangling from the sleeve. This thing costs more than my truck, he muttered under his breath. Kaia leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. It fits. You look like you belong in it. I'm not so sure I belong anywhere near whatever event this is, Shane said, tugging at the lapel. You'll be fine, she replied calmly. Just try not to punch anyone unless I give you a signal. He gave her a flat look. I don't punch people. You threatened to, that night in the garage. That was different, he said. He grabbed your wrist. Kaia didn't respond right away. She stepped closer, adjusting the pocket square with a careful hand. Well, just know tonight's a different kind of circus. You're not selling this very well. I'm not trying to, she said honestly. This world isn't about comfort, it's about appearance, you'll see. He glanced at her through the mirror. So why are you even going? She paused, fingers still on the square. Because I built something, and when you build something this big, it starts owning parts of you. There was a quiet moment between them. Then Jason's voice broke through from the dressing area curtain. Are you done, Dad? You're taking forever. Kaia laughed softly. He's got a point. Shane changed back into his jeans and tee in record time and walked Jason over to the house next to the garage, where Mrs. Gail watched him on evenings when Shane worked late. She opened the door with a knowing smile. "You shaved," she said, arching a brow. "Just take the kid, Gail," he grumbled, but Kaia could hear the laughter under his voice. As they drove to the venue in her sleek black car, Shane kept his hands folded tightly in his lap. "So, what am I supposed to do at this thing?" "Smile, don't say much, and if someone asks what you do, tell them proudly." "You think they'll care?" "They won't, but I will." The ballroom was a cavern of chandeliers and murmured names. Waiters in black passed with trays of champagne flutes, and somewhere a string quartet played something expensive sounding. Shane had never seen anything like it. Kaia slipped her arm into his as they entered, every head turning. She wore a floor-length silver gown that shimmered with every step, her spine straight, her expression unreadable. "You weren't kidding," Shane muttered. "This place smells like money." "Try to breathe through your nose," she quipped. A man with slicked back hair and a frozen smile approached. "Kaia, I was wondering if you'd show." She didn't break stride. "Gregory." Gregory's eyes slid to Shane. "And this is?" "My guest," she said, "Shane Foster." Gregory offered a limp hand. "Pleasure." Shane shook it briefly before dropping it. "It's loud in here." Gregory blinked. "Pardon." "I said it's loud, all the nonsense bouncing off the walls." Kaia touched Shane's arm gently. "Let's get a drink." As they moved away, she whispered, "I'm going to be honest, that was deeply satisfying." "I didn't like his voice." "You're not supposed to. He once told me women don't belong in boardrooms." Shane glanced at her. "And now you own one." "Multiple." He blinked. "What?" She sighed. "Shane, I didn't tell you everything. I'm not in marketing or something simple like that." "I figured." "I run Ellington Capital." He stopped walking. "That's you." She turned to face him, expression unreadable. "Yes." The Kaia Ellington. The woman who bailed out that green tech company last year, who bought out the aerospace firm in Nevada. She nodded slowly. "That's me." He looked around the room again, then back at her. "You really don't belong in my world." She stepped closer. "Maybe not, but you're the only person I've met in years who doesn't care about this world. That's why I can breathe when I'm with you." He didn't respond. There were too many thoughts roaring in his head, fighting for space. Later, during the auction portion of the evening, Kaia leaned in. "You okay?" "You dropped a bomb on me and expected me to keep drinking like nothing happened." "I didn't lie to you." "No," he said, "but you left out a pretty big detail." "I wanted to know if you'd like me without it." "You think I'm that shallow?" "I think people are unpredictable." "Yes," he muttered, "they are." They were quiet for a long stretch. At one point, a woman in a red dress came over and gushed to Kaia about a merger in Paris. Shane watched Kaia nod politely, her face a mask, her voice smooth. But he could see it now, the exhaustion behind her eyes, the weight she carried. When the woman finally left, Shane said, "You don't like any of these people." "No," she admitted, "but I have to play nice. It's the cost of running an empire." He looked at her. "You ever think about walking away?" "All the time." "What stops you?" She hesitated. "I've never had anyone who made me believe I could." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, sharp and real. On the drive back, the tension was thick and quiet. When she pulled up to the garage, Shane turned to her. "I need time." Kaia nodded. "I figured." He got out without another word. She sat in the car for a long time after he disappeared inside. Because for the first time in years, she had no idea what was going to happen next. Shane didn't see Kaia for a week. She didn't call, didn't show up at the garage. and that silence carved at him. He wasn't angry, not really, but something inside him had twisted when she revealed who she was. It wasn't about the money, it was the distance. The world she lived in it wasn't just different from his, it was another planet. He kept busy fixing transmissions, hauling tires, making Jason waffles in the morning and reading dinosaur books at night, but his mind kept circling back to her. The way she'd looked at him in the car that night. Not defensive, not proud, just bracing for him to leave. And he had. On the 8th day, a letter arrived. Not a text, not a call, a letter. Handwritten, folded inside a cream envelope with his name on the front. He opened it at the kitchen table while Jason ate cereal, watching him with interest. Shane read it once, then twice. Then he stood up, grabbed his keys, and told Jason to get his shoes on. "You're going to see her?" Jason asked, sliding off the chair. "Yeah," Shane said. "I think I've been standing still long enough." He dropped Jason off with Mrs. Gale again, this time with a thank you pie from the diner, and drove across town to the address on the envelope. It wasn't a mansion, not some sprawling estate with fountains and statues. It was a penthouse above a quiet, modern building with no doorman and a discreet entrance. When he reached the top floor, the elevator opened directly into her living room. She was sitting on the floor, barefoot, surrounded by open folders and papers. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot, oversized sweater slipping off one shoulder. She looked up when he stepped in. "You came," she said quietly. "You wrote," he replied. Kaia stood slowly. I wasn't sure if it was too much. "It was honest," Shane said, "and that's what I've been trying to figure out, whether this is real or just something that looks good under the right light." She crossed her arms, not in defense but to steady herself. "I don't have a lot of people in my life who see past the surface. Most people want something from me. Investments, access, power. You're the first person who didn't change when you found out who I was, you just got quiet. Because I didn't know if I was part of your life or part of your rebellion against it." Kaia's expression cracked. "I'm not rebelling, Shane. I've already built the empire. I'm just tired of being alone at the top of it." He looked around. The place was beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows, soft lighting, furniture that probably cost more than his yearly income, but it felt cold. Like no one ever laughed there. Like nothing messy was allowed to exist. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. "Because I liked the way you looked at me. Like I was just a woman, not a name, not a headline." "You still are," he said, "but you gotta let me in all the way, Kaia, not just the parts that fit into my garage." She stepped forward. "Then you should see the parts that don't." She led him past the living room, down a hallway lined with framed patents and photos he didn't recognize. At the end was a door she unlocked with her thumbprint. Inside, the space was completely different. Bookshelves lined the walls, laden with dog-eared novels and scientific journals. A long drafting table stood near the window, covered in mechanical sketches and circuit boards. On the far side, a glass case displayed a prototype engine unlike anything Shane had ever seen. "I designed that when I was 17, she said, touching the glass. "It was the first time I felt like I wasn't pretending to be smart. I got laughed out of the first 3 boardrooms, brought it too. Then I stopped asking for permission." Shane walked to the table, scanning the diagrams. "You built this." "Every part. My father was an engineer. He died before I finished it. I promised I'd build something he'd be proud of." He looked at her. "You did." Kaia met his eyes. "I'm not asking you to be impressed. Just want you to understand who I am when the dress comes off and the cameras aren't watching." "I don't care about the cameras," Shane said. "I care about the woman who brings my son cookies and listens to him talk about raptors like it's world news. I care about the woman who doesn't flinch when she walks into a grease-stained garage. That's the woman who matters." Silence stretched between them. Then Kaia took a slow step forward. "I miss you." Shane reached up and touched her face gently, brushing a curl from her cheek. "I miss you too." Her breath caught. "So what now?" "You show me all the parts of your life," he said, "and I show you how to make pancakes without a recipe." She laughed, soft and real. "Deal." Later that evening, they sat on the floor of her study, surrounded by blueprints and pencils, eating takeout from paper cartons. Shane told her stories about growing up in the garage. Kaia told him about the first time she stood in front of a room full of executives and realized they were scared of her. By the time the sky outside her window turned dark, Shane leaned back on his elbows and looked at her. "I wasn't ready before," he said, "but am now if you are." Kaia nodded, her fingers wrapping around his. "I've been ready, just didn't know if I was allowed to be." "You are," he said. "With me you are." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. The sun had barely cleared the rooftops when Shane opened the garage, the familiar creak of the rolling door echoing down the street. He hadn't slept much, but for once, it wasn't because of worry. It was something else now: anticipation, a quiet certainty pressed beneath his ribs. That morning, Kaia had sent a courier with a folded schematic and a handwritten note at the bottom. "I want to build this with you." Not buy, not fund, build. He studied the design now, spread across the workbench beside his coffee mug. It was a hybrid engine unlike anything he'd seen: compact, efficient, and practically pulsing with potential. He ran his fingers along the edges of the blueprint, already imagining the parts he'd need to source. Not tomorrow. Now. The bell above the door rang about an hour later. "You're early," Shane said without looking up. Kaia walked in wearing jeans and a utility jacket, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. "I didn't want to wait." He handed her a pair of gloves. "Then let's not." They worked side by side all morning, the hum of tools and the occasional burst of laughter filling the bay. Kaia wasn't just precise, she was fearless. She didn't flinch at the weight of the metal or the roar of the grinder. At one point, she elbowed him lightly after he misaligned a bracket. "You always this reckless with measurements?" she asked. "Only when I'm distracted." "By what?" He looked at her, the smudge of graphite on her cheek, the fire in her eyes. "You." By the time the sun dipped low behind the trees, the prototype had a frame. It wasn't much, just a beginning, but it felt like something real. Shane leaned against the workbench, wiping his hands on a rag. "You could have taken this to any lab in the country. Why here?" Kaia tossed a wrench into the tray, then leaned beside him. "Because I've spent years surrounded by people who say yes before they've even looked. You're the first person who ever made me want to slow down and think." He glanced at her. "You sure you're not just slumming it with the guy who smells like brake fluid?" She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "I've had penthouses and boardrooms. What I haven't had is someone who pushes back without trying to control me. You don't care who I'm supposed to be, you just see me." He nodded slowly. "I see you." Outside, headlights pulled up to the curb. Jason tumbled out of Mrs. Gale's car, backpack swinging, face lit up. "Dad," he called, running in. Kaia bent down just in time for his hug, catching him mid-run with an ease that surprised Shane. "Did you guys build a spaceship yet?" Jason asked, peering at the engine frame. "Better," Shane said. "We started something that might change everything." Jason's eyes widened. "Can I help?" Kaia smiled. "Absolutely, but only if you promise not to hide the socket wrench again." He grinned. "No promises." Later that night, after Jason was asleep and the house had gone quiet, Shane stepped outside. The air was cooler than usual, the kind of stillness that made you notice things: the rustle of trees, the distant bark of a dog, the quiet hum of your own thoughts. Kaia joined him on the porch, 2 mugs in hand. "Ginger tea," she said, handing him one, "helps after a long day." He took it. "You really think this thing can work? The engine?" "I don't start things I don't believe in." He looked at her. "You're not going back, are you?" "To what?" "The suits, the speeches, all of it." She sat beside him on the steps. "I don't think ever really belonged there. I made it work because I had to. Now, I want something different." "What does that look like?" She looked out over the yard. "A shop that builds things no one thought possible. A boy who thinks raptors still roam the earth. A man who makes greasy hands look like a badge of honor. That's enough for me." He reached over and took her hand. "It's enough for me too." The next few weeks moved fast. Word spread about the prototype, but Kaia kept it quiet. No press releases. No sudden announcements. Just long days in the garage, parts arriving in unmarked boxes, phone calls made behind closed doors. Shane brought in 2 of his most trusted old contacts mechanics who'd worked on custom builds for decades, and under the radar, they built something extraordinary. Jason, meanwhile, took his self-appointed role as junior engineer very seriously. Kaia made him a badge out of duct tape and cardboard. He wore it daily. One afternoon, an envelope arrived addressed to Shane in silver script. Inside was an invitation, a black tie showcase event for innovation in energy design. Kaia had been selected to present, anonymously, under a project name only Shane recognized. Foster 1. He set the card down on the table. "You didn't use Ellington." She shook her head. "This isn't about Ellington, this is about us." The night of the event, Shane wore the same suit she'd bought him the first time, this time by choice, not obligation. Kaia stepped out in a midnight blue dress, sleek and simple, no diamonds, no headlines, just her. As they stood backstage, waiting for their turn, she looked at him. "Do you regret it?" she asked, "letting me in?" He shook his head. "I think you were always supposed to walk into that garage. And you were always supposed to walk me to my car." They stared at each other for a long moment, the buzz of the event around them fading into background noise. Then the lights shifted, and their names were called. They stepped out together, hand in hand. And something about that moment, not the applause, not the cameras, not even the future they were unveiling, made it clear. This was the life they chose. Together. A soft breeze drifted through the open bay doors of the garage, carrying the scent of spring and the faint hum of cicadas beginning their evening chorus. Shane stood at the workbench, tightening the final bolt on the finished prototype. It was done, every wire, every panel, every component they'd built with their own hands. The engine gleamed beneath the overhead lights, quiet and powerful, waiting to be tested for the first time outside the lab-controlled environments. Kaia brushed her fingertips over the polished edge of the casing, her nails still chipped from the week's labor. "You know, this thing could change the way we think about energy systems. It's not just an engine anymore, it's a statement." Shane leaned against the bench, arms crossed. "You're thinking global." "I'm thinking responsible," she said. "The right partners, the right scale. No more letting greedy hands shape innovation." He nodded once, then turned to her. "Then let's keep it ours." She looked up at him, sunlight casting an amber glow across her face. "You really mean that?" "I don't want to sell it, not to some conglomerate that'll gut it to cut costs. I want to build it the right way, here, with you." Kaia stepped closer, her voice low. "I walked away from half the world to start over, Shane. I don't want to do it halfway." "You're not," he said. "You're doing it with both feet planted, and I'm right beside you." She searched his eyes. "So what are we then, if we're not building empires or chasing headlines?" "We're building something better," he said, pulling her into his arms. "A life, one that doesn't need to shout to matter. Her lips curved into a smile that only he ever got to see. Then, let's make it official. He blinked. Official. Kaia reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, weathered ring box, the kind that looked like it had been tucked away for years. She opened it. Inside sat a simple gold band. "This was my mother's," she said softly. "She gave it to me before she passed, told me I'd know when it was time to use it." Shane stared at it, stunned silent. "I don't want a ballroom or a headline. I just want you, and Jason, and a backyard with bad landscaping and a porch swing that creaks." He took the box gently from her hands. "You're asking me." Kaia lifted her chin. "Figured I've waited long enough." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Then yes, hell yes." The ceremony was held 3 weeks later, beneath the oak tree behind the garage. Jason stood proudly between them in a tiny navy blazer with a dinosaur pin on the lapel, grinning as he handed Shane the ring. Kaia wore a knee-length ivory dress with sleeves rolled to her elbows and a crown of baby's breath in her hair. Shane wore the same suit she'd once bought him, now altered to fit perfectly. There were no photographers, no press releases, no whispered speculation. Just neighbors, a few close friends, and the hum of something real settling into place. "I promise to never let grease stains keep me from dancing with you," Shane said, voice low and sure. "And I promise to never let the weight of the world pull me away from the home we're building," Kaia replied, her voice thick with emotion. Jason gave an exaggerated sigh when they kissed. "Finally," he muttered, making the crowd laugh. Afterward, they sat on picnic blankets in the yard, eating from foil trays of barbecue and passing around lemonade. Music drifted from the open windows of the house, and someone brought out sparklers when the sun dipped low. Later that night, after Jason had fallen asleep curled up in the hammock, Kaia and Shane sat on the porch swing, her head resting on his shoulder. "So," he said, "Mrs. Foster." She nudged him gently. "Mrs. Ellington Foster, thank you." He grinned. "Right, hyphenated, adds a bit of drama." "You love drama." "I love you." She lifted her head, eyes soft. "Say that again." He brushed her hair back from her face. "I love you, Kaia Ellington Foster. I love your fire. I love how you fight for what matters. I love how you make my son feel like he's the most important person in the world, and I love that you chose us." She traced the edge of his jaw with her thumb. "I'll keep choosing you, every single day." They sat there until the stars blanketed the sky, the air thick with the scent of magnolia and the sound of crickets. No champagne towers, no million-dollar fireworks. Just two people who had once belonged to different worlds and built a new one together. Weeks turned into months. The engine passed its first test run with flying colors. Investors came knocking, but Kaia and Shane turned them away unless they agreed to their terms. No shortcuts, no compromises, and full transparency. Foster Ellington Innovations opened its first small-scale facility just outside the city. It wasn't flashy, but it was theirs. Engineers from every background applied to work there, drawn by the promise of purpose over profit. Jason insisted on a corner of the office labeled Raptor Research Division. Shane gave him a whiteboard and a badge. Kaia gave him a desk lamp shaped like a fossil. On their first anniversary, Shane surprised Kaia with a second ring not gold, not diamonds. Just stainless steel, engraved with a single line. "Built, not bought." She cried when she saw it. They danced under the same oak tree where they'd said their vows, barefoot in the grass, lanterns swaying above them. And though their life was far from quiet with new challenges, new builds, and a boy who now wanted to be both an engineer and a paleontologist, every part of it was theirs. Not borrowed, not branded. Just real and alive and deeply, impossibly full of love.